Hello there, a very warm welcome to Asake Online. Uhlelo is on the Frontline. Ibizo lami Nozipho Majola. Njengesiqhelo, we look at the COVID-19 pandemic and other related issues. On this episode, we look at how the arts sector has been faring during the pandemic, a rather trying time. And so we speak to Saimon Mambazo Phiri, an entrepreneur, a choreographer, a multi-talented creative, and also one of the organizers of the Bulawayo Royal Art Awards. Hello, Mr. Mambazo. Welcome to the program, Mr. Mambazo.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like I barely scratched the surface in terms of introducing you and the multitude of work that you do. So before we get into the crux of the program, what exactly is it that you do?
Actually, that's a very difficult question always to answer. I think I'm the confused one. I really don't know what I do, but I think I'm a very lucky creative. I've been lucky to be involved in quite a lot of facets of the arts, from the creative process to production to admin, up to now where my bias is more about being producer, being the end line to the artistic product. So I'm actually more of a producer, director more than anything else now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Currently, what projects are you running at the moment?
Quite a bit, I run a record label, Savela Music Projects. I also run Savela Projects, which is diversified. So during the COVID era now, we've turned some of our facilities into TV recording studios to try and help the artists find their space in the so-called new normal, and also to help quite a lot of these young up-and-coming artists that don't have a digital footprint, so they can find a way of living their stuff so that it is there especially on the social media platforms and places like YouTube and so forth. Yeah.
Firstly, Bulawayo has always been viewed as a cultural hub of the country. Why is this so? Why is Bulawayo seen as the country's cultural hub?
It's a cliche, I know, that we talk about Bulawayo being the cultural hub, but I always like to refer to it as a creative hub more than just a cultural hub, because also with the term cultural hub, it means quite a lot of cultures exist in one place. Cultures coexist. Cultures are all equally recognized in that one place, that to make it a hub, really. But I think it's been more about the creative sector having so much happening in one city, because if you look at statistics, we're the only city in this country that can run a multicultural festival without importing talent. You talk Mbakumba, Isichicha, Mchongoyo, Sungura. It's things that you can find in this one city. So yes, we are quite a cultural melting pot, because the city has always been welcoming. People are free to come and settle in this city. They are free to explore their cultural norms, and also in the process to create different forms of art. Yes, we are indeed a cultural hub and also a creative hub.
It will take stakeholders like yourself to turn the arts sector into an industry. What needs to be in place for this to happen, so that as parents, we can have the confidence when our children say to us they want to get into the arts sector so that they can make a living? What needs to be in place? Has the industry grown into a fully fledged industry that can employ people full-time perhaps?
Unfortunately, it hasn't. I mean, the same struggles that we faced as young people trying to venture into the arts with our own parents are the same problems that young, talented creatives are having now with their own parents and extended families. We have kind of struggled to create an industry out of this amazing sector. I always say to people that we misuse the word industry, because we actually don't have an arts industry in this country. Yes, we have a sector that is vibrant with a lot of talented people, a lot of people that are promising. We struggle to make it an industry, in the sense that the value chain is never respected. You know, the artists want to do things themselves. The artists start from making, say, music or theater or dance. They want to produce it themselves. They want to sell it themselves. They perform it themselves. Music is still found in people's searchers, and it's a struggle. I pray that in my lifetime I will also witnessed the creation of an industry in this country, because once this industry is properly structured, we are one of the most amazingly talented nations in Africa, and we're bound to be a proper success. Unfortunately, we're still struggling to create an industry out of the arts, but hopefully the day is not far from today. Unfortunately, without turning our products into business products, there's too much of what I would term arts for art's sake, where it's all about fulfilling your desires. Yes, we all have a passion, but what is our purpose within the passion? So a lot of people need to travel through a journey where they are finding their purpose. Yes, passion, amazingly passionate people, amazingly talented, like I've alluded to before, but we need to start finding purpose. And for us to turn it into a proper industry, we need to employ a lot of business strategies. We need to commercialize some of our work. Unfortunately, business works with systems, and unfortunately, talented people come with an attitude. Most of them don't like systems. Until we have producers, we have directors, we have people that are marketeers, people that are looking at other facets of the sector and making them visible out there to the other industries. Until we have a chamber of commerce within the arts industry, the other chambers won't listen to us. The other ministries won't listen to us, because business is done through mostly their chambers and all these other gatherings that they have, not just on stage, not just in the studio, not just in the dance studios or in the galleries or the museums. So we need to adopt a lot of business systems and a lot of business strategies for us to have a fully fledged industry.
What will be the first step to making sure that we turn the sector into an industry?
For me, indabas have been done, workshops, talks. We are actually a big talk show in this sector. When we talk, we do talk. And I do feel it's change of attitude. It's just change of attitude. It's the young accepting that there is the old, and the old accepting that the future is young and the future is female. I tell a lot of people, there's so few numbers of female creatives being involved. Some of them are frustrated at their peak. Some of them are not even encouraged, when the future is the women and it's the young people. I believe it's change of attitude. We all have to accept each other. There is those that are talented. There is those that are less talented. There is those that seek skills and they find them, and the talented sometimes don't find the skills. So we need a balance, There is those that are lucky to be scholars within the sector. They go to school, they study, they analyze, they write theses, they write a lot of stuff, research documents. Allow them to come into the sector with their research. Allow them to come into the sector, but they can only come into the sector if they are accepting that there's also those that are talented that didn't go to school, So there needs to be a balance. So for me, it is the change of attitude. It is people working together, really, and realizing that none but ourselves can do this if we come together and accept each other. So change of attitude.
The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the whole world and it changed life as we knew it. Every sector was affected, society was affected. How did it affect the arts industry?
The arts sector.
No, I'm futuristic.
I know.
I'm hopeful that
like
we are
that.
moving from sector to industry.
We're actually been a sector that's been in ailing mode, even in intensive care. So something of this nature, an epidemic, is too much for someone who's already in intensive care. Yes, it's had a huge dent, but for me, being the person I am, I like to look at the positives. It's actually also, in the positive, it's helped quite a lot of people come out of their shells. Excuse me. I'm sure if you've been following a lot of online stuff, you've realized that artists are being innovative. There's so many artists that we discovered during the Bulawayo Arts Festival, the Credisi shows, some of the shows that have been done by sight. There's a lot of amazing new talent that we've discovered, which under the so-called old normal would not have found these people. So for me, there's this positive. And yes, unfortunately, the artists have been hit hard most of them don't have a steady income or a very seasonal sector. It just hit us before the big things like the ZITF could come into town, the big Easter holidays, the big independence celebrations which were coming to the city for the first time in 40 years. All that whole excitement that fed directly into the sector kind of was extinguished by this epidemic, and it left everyone confused, lost. But gradually, I think somehow we're finding ourselves. I just pray that when the world is gradually opening, some of our facets are also open, so artists are allowed to use the talents, the equipment, and the dreams that they have in the so-called new normal.
What are some of the lessons that the arts sector has learned from this COVID-19 outbreak?
Unfortunately not, and it's very sad. And also, like you mentioned before, I'm also involved with the Royal Bulaya Arts Awards, and to be honest, we were supposed to have the awards in June, like the norm, and when we sat in most of our review meetings, it looked wrong for us to be going dindindi full time, when the world was struggling, also when you knew that people were struggling. And when the government had promised all these stimulus packages for various industries, including the arts, and those, rescue packages, relief packages were not coming through. Hence, we created the conscious citizenship strategy to actually, besides giving food parcels to the artists, to also check on them. It was very interesting also going to most of these artist residences to find out where most of our people actually live. Quite a big eye opener, because every time you meet the artists on stage, there's lights, camera, and it's action. But when you go to the real side of life and you see the reality on the ground, it's sad. It's sad. It actually gives you more reason to turn this into an industry, because we're losing a lot of talent. A lot of talent goes to waste. People give up. People die. It was said just during that whole period, you realize someone that you're checking on actually passed on, and we never knew. It is sad. Yeah.
Would you say the sector was ready for such a disruption?
Who was? Who was? And I think no one was prepared for this. And the shutdown was actually more of a hindrance for the sector. If you'd asked the sector if they what they wanted, they would have said, let's write it on, like what Trump said. People should come to the shores. So no one was prepared for this, unfortunately.
So the pandemic forced many to adapt, and it forced everyone into the digital space, be it corporates, whether you're holding meetings, the likes of Zoom, Google Meetings, and the like have become popular. And also, we've been watching a couple of art programs on social media. How has this been going for the arts people, and has it gotten to a point where artists get to monetize it and get money for their bread and butter issues? At the end of the day,
Yeah, I mean that's another phenomenon. It's just an illusion. I mean you don't make money from Facebook. Yeah, you get a lot of clicks and views, but people don't eat views. They need money. And through research, for me also working with quite a lot of creatives, we've realized the best way is to go the YouTube route. So you then get paid after all these other subscribers that you get on your channels, and you at least can see where the money is after quite a certain period. But for most of these social media platforms, it's really a popularity contest. Just how many views you got, and how many people and how many countries are clicking on your product. Yes, in the long run, it's money you can touch. Yes, it could come back with future festival participation, with future record deals, with future features elsewhere. And some of the productions and the shows that have sponsors would obviously pay the people. But in generality, where most of the artists are pushing their own brands, there's no money. It's just to keep busy.
so would you say making use of the digital space in all social media platforms, is it sustainable in the long run?
It is not. Hence, respecting the value chain. If there were marketeers within the industry, they'll be looking at how the Jerusalem phenomenon is caught up with the world. Why are we even celebrating that in Zim? Why are all these corporates even jumping on the bandwagon? Because there's nothing local that they can jump on. Or is there nothing local? Or there's no one who's proposed anything local to them. But is that the work of the artists? Is that the work of the creatives? Is that the work of the people who spend time in the studios? No, it's not. It is the work of the marketeers. And when the marketeers meet, they meet with their peers. And when things are proposed, you'll be surprised. All of these Jerusalem challenges were proposed by people to companies. And companies are paying for it, because everyone is riding on a wave. Why are we not writing on Sandan Debele's last release, on Ja Prez's last release? Surely, you mean in Zim, no one has released something we can create a dance move to? Even emulate what South Africa is doing with their products? Yes, I know they've broken boundaries and gone to the world, but couldn't we do our own things? So there's a lot of things that are happening because there's no link between the arts and business, and the money is in the corporate sector. Once the corporate sector comes into the arts, the two can marry each other and go hand in hand. And surely an industry can start being, created, and in the future we can claim to have an industry.
We saw our neighbors, South Africa, Durban in particular. The artists there took to the streets to demonstrate, to ask their president to say, can he open events at least so that they can perform even to half the venue capacity? And what's your take on that? How did you see that? Can we emulate that?
Did it not end in tears? I know it's a cliche, but it ended in tears, both real tears and tear gas tears, So I think it was a wrong move, because the epidemic is there. We can't run away from the fact that this is real, and we are not a special people. After we leave the stages in our studios, we are real people. We also live with the epidemic. Yes, we are frustrated and we want things to open up, but there's ways of doing things, and it could have been done better. And funny enough, a week after, the production companies, all these people were behind the big shows in South Africa, like Idols and all these other shows, they also took to the streets, but in a nicer way. They took their flight cases, they went to the union buildings, and they got the minister to sign their petition. So if you compared the two and you think that looked a bit like rascals and this looks like real people, but it's the people in the same industry. So even people like South Africa who claim to have an industry, they also struggling because this, like I told you, talented people come with a certain attitude. Sometimes it's about personalities behind what's happening. And if you look at that scenario that I've just given you, the 1 week it was all these so-called talented musicians in Durban. Durban has got all the biggest musicians. And then the following week it was the organized people in Joburg who ran the industry who said, look, we're going to do this, but let's do it the right way.
So now that we have those two examples, can we pick a leaf from this, emulate some of the things, or we cannot totally? How can we get to a point where we are making sure that we are curbing the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we are still sustaining livelihoods of artists in Zimbabwe?
I think it's a time we need to prioritize. Look, the schooling system has prioritized the examination classes. Look at what would be the equivalent in the arts. Which sectors are less vulnerable? Which sectors are less risky? Which sectors can't we allow to die? Because the kids that are writing exams have to be given priority because they are sitting public examinations so that the next grades can go on to the next grades. What do we have within this sector? Which genres are struggling? Which genres can easily be served? Poets, one-man show, the galleries, you can still keep your social distance. We could then prioritize them and probably end up with the festivals and the big concerts where thousands of people come into one space. But there's means and ways of doing that. And I'm glad that the National Arts Council, through the ministry, have also been talking to us in our various individual capacities to say, How do we make this happen? And the problem with taking a leaf from South Africa in most cases is because they have an industry which is structured. And for us, we still amorphous organizations. We're still ad hoc. A lot of things happen off the cuff. So our consultation and their consultation is different. And the Zimbabwean story has never been the South African story. So we need to find solutions to our local scenarios. Just like the government of South Africa said they're opening the borders on the 2nd, and the assumption is that Zimbabwe is also opening the borders on the 2nd. There's so much assumption in a lot of things that happen within our sector, which we just take from South Africa and think it comes here, it works. Some of them don't work, and we need to find our own solutions. And this is actually a very good time, because we've had time to think. COVID has allowed all of us to put tools down, go home, rest, more than half a year. Surely, if you don't have a big dream now, or if you don't have a big project, or if you don't have something sustainable that you're thinking of doing, you're probably lost in this sector. Lost, like really lost, because we've had enough time to do better things and newer things.
In other sectors in business, we saw government coming in with relief funds to sort of cushion those affected during this time. Has the art sector received these relief funds in this regard?
Yeah, these relief funds have been spoken about. Artists have been filling forms. But only last week, the permanent secretary in the ministry was here to say other provinces and other places have received their relief funds. But Bulawayo hasn't because of irregularities. I'm sure you saw it in the papers. But I'm always quick to say we don't want. We want relief funds, but we need more. What could I call it? Stimulus packages that could help some of the people that have found a way to survive in the so-called new normal. We need more recording spaces. We need more equipment. More stimulus packages could help this sector grow. Because it's not about giving me food today. Even the Bible says you give a man fish, feed him for one day. Mm-hmm. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for the rest of his life. Yes, the relief packages are welcome, but more stimulus packages to do with project-based work, to rescue, maybe call them rescue packages, to rescue institutions, creatives. I think we need more of that, especially now, more than ever before.
Should people want to get in touch with you, where can they get you on social media?
Now I'm used to say I'm found on all social media platforms. Yeah, I'm known as Mambazo on social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Once you find me, you get links into what I do. Yeah, so the new normal allows us to be active there.
What would you say to artists to inspire an entrepreneurial spirit in them so that they could find ways to be sustainable and make a living even during this tough COVID era?
For sure. I've always been one that talks about a man never relying on one income. It is time that artists realize that over and above being creatives, we are human beings. Once we fall sick, people take us back to our families. Once we struggle, we spend most of our time with our families. And I want to encourage artists to look after their own, to look after their loved ones, because in times of need, they are always found with their loved ones, whether they are sick or they've passed on or they are struggling. So it's a good time to look after our loved ones. And also with the passion that we have, we need to start finding our purpose. We need to start finding how we impact on society, just besides just being creative. And in the process, like I said, find means and ways to make money. And if you can't make money using your passion, make money elsewhere and let that money sponsor your passion.